At the end of the trial, you will be given a jury charge to make a determination about whether somebody has done a crime, committed a crime. You will not be asked to determine whether or not Dr. Murray is negligent in the abstract, or whether he's a good doctor in the abstract. You will never be asked to determine whether Dr. Murray should have been the cause of Michael Jackson's death. You will be asked to determine who was the cause of Michael Jackson's death. The science in this case, the pure science, the evidence in this case, we believe is going to show you this. Despite everything that had gone on in the past, despite anything that had gone on during that day, during the 10 hours on June 25th, 2009, while Michael Jackson was frustrated because he could not sleep, frustrated because his doctor refused to give him a drug that he preferred, that he wanted, he did an act without his doctor's knowledge, without his doctor's permission, against his orders. He did an act that caused his own death. The evidence is not going to show you that Michael Jackson died when Dr. Murray gave him propofol for sleep. What the evidence is going to show you is that Michael Jackson died when Dr. Murray stopped. Did you by any chance have occasion to listen to the audio tape that was played in this trial? Did anybody ever play an audio tape of Michael Jackson to you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Who played that audio tape to you?
I actually heard it. I was told I wasn't supposed to watch it on TV, but I did see it on the news. So
Yeah, that happened.
yeah, apologize.
Have you ever heard Michael Jackson sound like that before?
Not that extreme, but I have heard him talk slow before.
Why did you think that working with Dr. Murray was something you wanted to do?
Because he was my grandmother's. My grandmother was his patient, and I've seen how he treated my grandmother. So I said, if I asked him if I could volunteer at his office.
How did he treat your grandmother?
He was really nice to her. He would talk to her, but my grandmother doesn't really speak English, so I would translate for Dr. Murray.
So he would sit there or stand there and talk to your grandmother in what language were you interpreting?
Tagalog.
Okay. And he would have a conversation with her?
Yes, sir.
Did Dr. Murray get to know your grandmother?
I'm sorry?
Did Dr. Murray get to know your grandmother?
Yes.
One of the things about Dr. Murray, the differences in Dr. Murray, one of his character traits is he had a tendency to be friends with his patients, didn't he?
Yes.
It was kind of odd. I mean, they all kind of got along. He knew about their family. He knew about their
That's
what
right.
church they went to. I mean, he was friends with them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And as it turns out, a lot of these patients had a tendency to have an attachment to Dr. Murray.
They do.
Our pharmacy software system has a number checking system on it.
And is that when you input the DEA number?
Correct.
And if there's any red flags, it would alert you to it, correct?
It would tell you if it's an incorrect number.
Okay, and in this case, everything checked out. There was no red flags or incorrect numbers, correct?
Correct.
So Dr. Murray was authorized to place these orders for these medications, correct?
Yes.
Now, is propofol a controlled substance?
No.
Now, you testified that some of this medication was shipped to an address in Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
And that was the address in Santa Monica that Dr. Murray had provided you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, was there anything wrong with shipping medication to a address provided by a doctor?
No.
Did you take any notes when you collected that evidence on June 25th?
I did.
Okay. And where are those notes?
I did not save those notes. All of the information from my hand notes on the 25th was put into the narrative. the evidence log, and case notes.
Where was those handwritten notes? Where were they kept that you would have lost them?
Objection misstates the testimony.
The objection is sustained.
Did you lose them or did you intentionally delete them?
I intentionally destroy all of my notes from scenes once I write the Form 3A.
Except for June 29th.
Correct. Because that was a lot more information than I usually have.
Why would you destroy your notes from June 25th?
Because after a normal scene investigation, I get rid of my notes and I put everything into a narrative. Returning to a scene a second time is not something that's typical, and there was a lot of medical evidence, so I kept those notes.
But the scene notes that reflected the evidence that was there on the day that Michael Jackson died, you destroyed.
Right, I do that in all my cases.
All right. Ms. Fleek, would you agree with me that you made a substantial number of mistakes in your investigation of this case?
No.
You would. Well, would you agree with me that if you don't take notes, you don't keep your notes, that's bad investigation, that's bad investigative work? Would you agree?
No.
So you'd have to take into consideration time of dosing.
You're going to have to take a lot of into consideration.
What else other than time of dose and amount of dose would you have to take into consideration?
Well, again, as I said yesterday, assumptions being made. You know, you're starting to get very deep into pharmacology, which I don't have a thorough background in.
Wouldn't it have a little bit of difference from propofol and lidocaine in that lorazepam is not subject to redistribution?
Objection beyond his area of expertise.
If you understand and are able to answer, fine. If not, tell us.
It's starting to go beyond.
So, in essence, what you are saying is that lorazepam can come into the stomach through redistribution. Are you saying that?
Saying it can get into the stomach via ion trapping.
Ion trapping is what holds it in the stomach, isn't it? It's not what gets it into the stomach.
Again, I understand the gist of this. I have a general knowledge of it. But when you start talking specifics, you're starting to get out of my area of expertise, and I would prefer to stay out of this.
His body was warm. There was no change in color. So I assume that everything happened very quickly, just about the time I was going, within that time and coming back. So I started immediately to perform CPR. I love Mr. Jackson. He was my friend. And he opened up to me in different ways. And I wanted to help him.
Obviously, inevitably, things happen.
He passed. They pronounced him.
Other than Mr. Pena and myself asking you to come to the hotel that we were staying at for the interview, did we make any limitations on the questions you could ask?
No, sir.
Did we at any point say to you, well, that's a subject we're just not going to go into?
No, sir.
Did Dr. Murray make any statement about things he didn't want to talk about?
No, he did not.
All right. Any question was wide open for you to ask. Is that right?
That's correct.
And there was no limitation on the time that we were there?
That's correct.
You could have been there all night if you needed to. We
Yes,
didn't
sir.
say we got to go, right?
That's correct.
There was no point during the conversation with Dr. Murray did he need some private conversation with his lawyers.
That's correct.
And you know what I mean by that, right?
Yes.
Because you actually were present when you spoke with Michael Emir Williams. Is that right? Did you interview Michael Emir Williams on August 31st, 2009?
Yes.
And you remember when he had to leave the room with his lawyer for a private conversation? Remember that?
Vaguely, yes.
How many pills are in that bottle?
There are 9.5 pills
9 tablets?
and a half.
And that was an original prescription of 30?
Yes.
And we also had another empty bottle that was found in the somewhere in the Mr. Jackson's bathroom. You understand therapeutic dosing for lorazepam, don't you?
Approximately, yes.
You felt that the lorazepam, well, you felt that benzodiazepines had a part in the cause of death, don't you?
Yes.
If the propofol, rather than being slowly infused over 3 to 5 minutes, was jammed all at once, you could get that 2.6 level, couldn't you?
You might get it locally. I don't know if you would get it after everything had equilibrated.
You've got Dr. Schaefer's report in front of you?
I do not.
Do you have his diagram of a bolus infusion of 25 milligrams of propofol?
No.
In your testimony yesterday, you did not demonstrate or tell the jury that Dr. Murray used a tab on people's 30, right?
I did not speak of it one way or the other. I did not consider it relevant.
You showed them, Dr. Murray, or demonstrated to them Dr. Murray putting a bottle of propofol into an IV bag and propping it up in there, right?
Yes. I didn't show them him. I showed them me doing that.
And then testify that's what you think happened.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So under your analysis, Dr. Murray would have taken an IV bag, right?
Yes.
Cut a hole like you did with your IV bag.
For the bag we found.
Gone through the mechanism of putting that propofol bottle in the IV bag.
Yes.
Right? Propping it up.
Yes.
And then infusing it that way. To going through all those steps.
Yes.
You find that reasonable to assume?
Yes.
You made a statement yesterday, or days run together, it might have been the day before yesterday, that it is not a good idea for a scientist to make bold predictions or bold grand statements, I believe you said, something like that, referring to that propofol sleep study, without sufficient evidence. Do you remember saying that?
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
And you certainly do consider that what you have claimed occurred in this case is an extraordinary claim.
Not at all.
You understand that Dr. Murray is literally on trial for his life.
Objection. Counsel's testifying.
Sustained. It's argumentative as well.
Dr. Sheriff, you didn't even stop there, did you? You didn't even stop there, did you? You literally swallowed propofol.
Before the study, yes.
You literally took 20 milliliters and swallowed it.
That's correct.
Did you get informed consent before you did that?
I knew it was inert.
And so before you even testified, you knew that Dr. White was not going to say that Michael Jackson swallowed propofol. You knew that before you ever testified.
How could he
I'll
know that?
overrule the objection. It goes to the witness's state of mind and credibility.
Yeah.
You may answer it.
I did not know what Dr. White would say, and I still don't know what Dr. White will say.
You have the first shot occurring how many hours past midnight?
First shot occurs at midnight.
At midnight.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
4 milligram shot at midnight.
Yes.
And you know from reading the statements
that at midnight Michael Jackson hadn't even left rehearsal.
That may well be the case. I would have to look, but that's fine if it is, because keep in mind, you have the spreadsheets too. And the goal is to show that multiple doses can be used to do this.
Well,
You have all the simulations. I'm just trying to put together scenarios. I have no dosing records.
That would make a lot of sense if you didn't keep referring to Dr. Murray when you talked about this.
Mr. Alvarez never testified that evidence item 106 was the item, the bottle that he saw in the IV bag, correct?
Correct.
All he testified was that he saw a vial in a bottle, in a IV bag, correct?
I'm not sure exactly what he said, but he didn't say that that was the bottle.
Right. He didn't even specify it was a propofol bottle, correct?
That's correct.
The instances where you met with Mr. Alvarez for his fingerprints, he never mentioned this additional chamber on the IV bag, correct?
Correct.
And finally, in April of 2011, weeks before we were scheduled for trial, is the first time he mentioned an additional chamber, correct?
After he viewed the saline bag, yes.
After he viewed the saline bag in the DA's office, correct?
Yes.
With the constant contact, was it because of your medical condition?
Partly, yes.
And what was the other part?
My friend.
Now, after your heart attack, after your stents were put in, did you develop a friendship with Dr. Murray?
Yes.
Okay. And that friendship has lasted till today?
Till today.
Now, you've had other doctors in the past, have you not?
I have.
And you developed friendships with them as well?
No.
Well, why Dr. Murray?
It's because of Dr. Murray. The way he cares for you, and the way he makes you feel, and the concern, and the love for you he has for you. He's not greedy. I mean, he doesn't charge me my deductibles or nothing. He never has. I've sent patients to him, my employees, my secretaries, that he didn't even know if they had insurance. And he took care of them.
If this man had been greedy, he never would have come to an area or community of acreage home, 75% of them poor, on welfare and Social Security, where he was making less than where he was in Vegas.
I believe there's evidence that he was dependent upon Demerol.
What about addicted?
Possibly.
Possibly.
My opinion is that based on my prior definition and what's known about his public behavior and this course of treatment, that he was probably addicted to opioids.
I read all these documents and I was somewhat perplexed as to how the determination had been made by essentially all of the experts that Dr. Murray was infusing propofol, because in my examination of the documents and the evidence that was described, it wasn't obvious to me. And I thought that there were questions if, in fact, Murray had administered the drugs that he described in his conversations with the police department and the doses that he described. I would not have expected Michael Jackson to have died. We've talked earlier about the difficulty in drawing up even 5 cc's. To have a patient who's somewhat sedated under the effects of drugs, drawing up at one time, it may be conceivable. Drawing it up 6 times over that period of time, 2 hours, is inconceivable, yes. He would be knocking himself out, waking up, figuring out how to draw it up again, and then whacking in another 10 cc dose, and he'd probably be asleep before he got all 10 cc's in. So in my world, this is not a very realistic possibility. are not realistic at all.
How about self-injecting 50 milligrams each?
That's only slightly less absurd.
I mean, would that include lidocaine also in that scenario?
Well, if you assume there was a 1-to-1 ratio, yes, it would include giving 300 milligrams of lidocaine, which is, again, a huge dose and could be just toxic into of itself.
You would agree that that scenario is absurd also?
Slightly less absurd than the previous one, but yes.
You can have people on speed dial and call them even faster than 911, so I think certainly 911 is easy to dial. You're absolutely right.
There's no justification for what Conrad Murray did in failing to immediately call 911, is there?
As I said earlier, I think he should have called 911 sooner. I do not, however, think it would have made any difference in the outcome of this case. I think that once the patient was resting apparently comfortably and had been observed for a period of time such that the risk of either respiratory or cardiovascular adverse effects had passed, it's not unreasonable to leave it certainly is done in practice.
And I want you to take this case out of Michael Jackson. Take it away from Michael Jackson. Think about that. Take it away. Let's put it somewhere else. Let's put it in a psych hospital. Some patient kills himself. Put it in a hospital where some patient breaks into a cabinet. Put it in a family situation where somebody overdoses. Put it anywhere you like. But at least if you're going to hold Dr. Murray responsible, don't do it because it's Michael Jackson. This is not a reality show. It's reality. And the decisions you make, is it making good TV? It's how it affects real human beings and people that love them. So I hope that you do the right thing and find Dr. Murray not guilty. Thank you.